Hello, everyone. It's Lindsay Landry, and this is the Make a Splash Summer Bash. And today I am here with Mariana, who is a certified business coach and consultant. And we're going to be talking all about soulful strategy and how to strategize with soul. So I'm super excited to have Mariana with us today. Do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lindsay. So my name's Mariana. I'm a biz coach and consultant. I help impact-driven entrepreneurs to increase their profit and impact so that they can live the life that they want. And I do so mostly through high-level marketing strategy and sales, and I am in love with Facebook ads. All very strategy-full.
Yeah, you are. I know we've had some conversations about it, and it's your total genius of like really getting to the nuts and bolts and like being able to break things down in a digestible way to get people where they're really wanting to go. So I'm super excited just to kind of dive in and talk more about what you do and how you work with your clients. But first, do you want to just tell them a little bit about like how you've gotten here?
Yeah. So I've always been a little bit of an entrepreneur at heart. Like since I was a child, I had like little tiny businesses. I like did crazy stuff to as businesses. And then my parents are both professors, so I ended up going to school to become a nurse. And graduated from nursing school, started working as a bedside nurse in neuro ICU, like brain surgery. And then I did that for a while. And at the side, I was like kind of getting that entrepreneurial itch again, like when I was making money. So I started buying rental properties and renting them out. And so then I ended up like climbing the corporate ladder there in nursing, which was awesome because as a brand new nurse, you work like night shift and it's 13-hour shifts. It was really exhausting. And I ended up going to work at a transplant as a transplant coordinator. So I was literally in charge of offering out organs, asking people to donate their organs as their loved one was dying. It was really intense, but really beautiful experience. Just as far as the impact I was making was like so fulfilling. But again, 24-hour shifts was what I was doing. So I always gave a lot in my career. And then after that, I moved to South Texas and started working as a case manager. And that is all about like on a case by case basis, like increasing the revenue and the profit of the hospital. And I absolutely adored it. I felt like it was finally like using my business love with, my education in healthcare. And then I was like looking around at my life and I was like, although I've climbed the corporate ladder and like had a really cushy job, especially for a nurse where like I had an office and all the things, and I still was really unhappy because I had a child at home and I couldn't even see him like maybe an hour a day. So I was like, this is not really what I had planned or like what I thought my life should look like at this point. And it was a really stressful job. So I started again, like the entrepreneur inside of me started coming up with ideas and I started doing health coaching. Sorry, I feel like this is super long. And then when I did health coaching, my daughter was born early. She was a preemie. And I began like, people started asking me like, how are you sustaining yourself? And your daughter's in the NICU and you're, comfortably okay with like not making money anymore. And I was like, well, I have a business. This is how, what I've always done with side businesses and stuff. So then I started doing a little tiny bit of business coaching for a while for free. And then I went into fully launching my business coaching practice. So, long story.
Yeah. And I think it's so, I think in itself, it's like a perfect example of like blending the strategy and also the soul, right? Because it's like, even from an early age, you had that deep desire and it was just part of you. Like it was something that was just there. And it's not like you were thinking, how, what can I do to get to XYZ? It's not like you had this big vision of like, I want to be a business coach, but instead you were really following that inner nudge. And then as you followed that, you were also exploring what step can I take to get to that next feeling that I want to feel.
Yeah. I feel like that's also a really important piece. Like I listened to that inner calling of entrepreneur life, that I had from within, because like I said, my parents are both professors. I was expected to go to school. When I told them what I was doing, they thought I was nuts. So even my husband, like when I bought my first house, and I had just graduated from nursing school, my husband was like, "You are psycho." Like, who does that? I was like 23, and I was like, "No, this is awesome. It's going to be a great opportunity. We're going to have passive income." And it was just like being true to like myself, even though everyone else thought I was crazy, and I know that sounds a little out there, but it's really like just letting that journey evolve. And also like, I feel a really important part of that whole like listening to yourself stuff is like, I did business coaching for free because I wasn't feeling ready, right? Like I did the stuff that like, I didn't just jump in and be like, fake it till you make it. I really waited until I was confident and comfortable. And then I was like, okay, I'm a business coach. Like, this is what I'm actually doing. And I feel like that really helped me to stay in integrity, but also even more so like with the confidence piece of like, oh yeah, I do kind of know what I'm doing. Right. Because I find that a lot. That happens a lot, right? Like we feel like the imposter syndrome, and it's like, well, just wait until you feel ready and then go out with whatever you want to do.
I really love that you're saying that, because I know, especially for the visionaries, in my community, I have a ton of heart, soul-centered entrepreneurs, intuitives who are really like visionaries and feelers, and they see their big dreams. And a lot of times we can almost go into like paralysis over our big dreams, right? So it's like we see it and then we try to start strategizing and mapping out like how we're going to get there. And I think that sometimes is like when the fear starts to kick in, because we're not actually at that point of confidence to have the big dream. Or like what I like to call it is we're not at the energy capacity. Like we have to let our energy system like expand and strengthen to where we can actually receive the thing that we're wanting. Is there anything that you want to say about that?
Yes. I really struggled with that. Like the whole energy and capacity to receive. Like I saw your video last week about increasing your income. So last year I had been doing like 5K months and I was doing okay with 5K months. And then I shot up to like 15K, like literally in 1 month. And it shocked my system so much. Like and you would think like, oh, well, what's so bad about making the money that you want, right? And it's like, when you are comfortable at a certain level, that increase can feel overwhelming. And so what happened is I dropped back down to like 5K the next month, right? Like I just couldn't sustain that. And it took me a couple of months to get back up to 10K range. But I just wanted to really openly talk about that, because I think there is a piece about the receiving that is really important, that we allow for that to be incremental. And I feel like it's the same because I mean, whether we're talking about money or what you're doing in your life, you're not going to change overnight. It's really just about the incremental upgrades in every area.
Totally. So basically also, like, if someone is, say, wanting to sell a group program for the first time, and it's the first time they ever launch it, and say they want 20 people in it and they want to charge $5,000. I'm just totally making this up, you know? But like, we have to really take that into consideration, right? And that is the really being in alignment part. And it's not that the vision isn't right for them, but it's looking at, okay, let's really get grounded in where you are right now, and then strategize from that place, and also have a goal that is going to let you get to the next step.
Yeah. I feel like one of the biggest lessons I've had this year is that, you know, when you see somebody selling a course for $2,000, they didn't start at $2,000. They started at like $97 for the same course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the process is scaling, right? Like there's a difference between growing a business and then scaling, right? So the growth is like, okay, here's my $97 thing. Does anyone even want this? Right? And then people buy it, and then you're like, okay, let me scale this. Let me get 10 people next time. Let me get 5 people next time, right? Maybe the first time you do it, you get 2. Great. That doesn't mean you suck because you didn't get 25 at $5,000. It just means that's actually really good news. You validated your idea, right? Like, you know, somebody wants this, which means you can scale it up, which means next time you can charge $150, which means, you know, next time you might get 10 people in. So I think just remembering in everything we're doing that it's the process of incremental growth, and that is the strategy, right? Like that the strategy is incremental growth. It's not, you know, making $1 million tomorrow, because quite honestly, like even if you did that, your energy system probably couldn't keep up with that. It's kind of like the stats about lottery winners. Like most lottery winners end up broke, like broke. It's like because they can't accept that much at once. They haven't been able to assimilate that much at once.
Or the other thing that happens is, like, say you go on a whim, right, and you end up filling the spots, and then you don't have the community or the following, and then it's like you go back to feeling like, oh my God, can I do this again? So you're still in that fear loop or pattern.
Totally.
Which I'd love for you just to say a little bit about that, like having community, having a list, having following, because I know for me, when I was at the stages of really starting to get comfortable with offering, that was like a huge fear for me, because I felt like, you know, if you don't have people that you're specifically talking to or you're even in a relationship with, it can feel so terrifying to offer anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want to tie that conversation together with like what we need to do every day, right? Like something we talked about just before starting was like, okay, what do you do every day to like grow your business, like to make money? And like, what did I do every day when I had that 15K month, right? Like, and it was so clear, right? So I have a 3-step system for generating sales through free content. And it's literally attract, connect, and convert. So that's all you have to do every day. Attract, right? So like, are you bringing new people into your system, right? Like, are you bringing new people into your circle, whether it be a Facebook community, whether it be an email list? And even if it's a ghost town, like I want to remind you that everybody starts with a list and a group of 0. Actually, a group, you need 2 people. I remember the first time I ran it, I like added my best friend. Like, that's it. So it's like, that is, everyone starts at 0. And so starting with like, are we attracting new people, right? So are we getting out there with free content that leads people into our circles? And for me, I'll be really honest, right? Like the first 500 people in my Facebook community, it was like a ghost town. I was just talking to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had 20 people on my email list and I still emailed them once a week, right? Like, and it's continuing to show up even though you feel like you're talking to yourself, and trusting the process that will pay off at the end, right? In a long-term game, right? Like we didn't start a bit. It goes back to like the baby steps of growth, right? We didn't start a business to make $20 million tomorrow. Mm-hmm. We started a business to make $20 million over 10 years. And that's like, I feel like a much more doable goal, right? Like is just making sure, like, are you going to still be wanting to do this in 10 years? If not, then maybe this is not the business for you.
Totally.
Like, to be really honest.
Yeah, and I feel like there's such a misconception because you get into the online space and it's hard to even sometimes discern like what's true and what's not true and who's really making it and who's really not making it and they're saying they are, right? Mm-hmm. And so there can be kind of like an illusion that okay, you can have this huge package and just put it out there and start bringing in that money. But it's like, what I like to say is your energy aligned to that? Like, do you believe, and like not only believe with your mind, but like with every cell in your body that you can create that and put it out and you are going to attract the money. If there's any little bit of fear or doubt that it's going to happen, then I say work on that. Like, you know, not that it means you don't do it, but like work towards aligning that. And it makes me think of when I was getting ready to launch my first ever online program. It was called Ignite Your Intuition, and I had did exactly what you're talking about. So I had taught the program in person, I think three times. So I had already did it 3 times in person. And it was geared towards nutrition because that was what my business was at the time. And I wanted to shift it more towards energy. So it was going to be like my first energy program that I taught, and it was going to be an online program. And I was working with a business coach. Are you still there? Okay. You froze for a second. Okay. So I was working with a business coach, and she was just like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Like, you're going to do it and you're going to charge $500 a person and it's going to be 8 weeks. And so like I started mapping it out, and I had so much fear. And I think at the time my Facebook group might have been less than 100 people. And my list was probably around 100 people. And I was like paralyzed in fear. And I remember just feeling like, she was encouraging me just to keep going forward anyway. And it was a point where I really had to like tune in and distinguish, like, is this fear or is this my intuition? Mm-hmm. And for me, it just felt like I knew that if I offered the thing, like I just wasn't going to be fully on board with like getting the results that I wanted.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like that as you're strategizing, right? Like one of the good things to do is like check in, right? Like, because there's a million ways to make money, right? Like there's literally a million ways. So when you do that check-in, you say, does this feel right? And then what about it doesn't feel right? Is it the price point? Is it the like, I don't have a big enough list? Like, what is it? Like, ask yourself these questions, and that's how you can start to really create the strategy and the next step.
Exactly. So like for me, I had been focused on how can I bring more people into my community. and build my confidence around the program. And then I think I ended up launching it maybe in like a month. And I got people like within an hour of putting out the link, I had signups for the program.
That's so awesome. Exactly. So it's like your gut was telling you like now's not the time, right? And like I feel like the more we listen to that, the more we get the results we want. And also like the strategy will still be there for you. Like there's no it's not going away, right? Like the strategy will always be there for you. I want to go back to like what you said about selling though, because I feel like that's an important part of like what to do every day, right? Like if we're an entrepreneur and we're not selling, we're not making money, and therefore cannot continue to help more people and to be in business. So I feel like you don't have to sell right now, but like if your gut is telling you this is an amazing program, you got to do this right now, you go do it. Like, like I had a client recently do that. She's like, I really want to offer this sale for Canada Day. And I was like, do it. There's something about that sale that you have to do. And it's like, it was not, we had already planned a different challenge for her, a challenge launch for her in a couple weeks. And she's like, well, can I do it? I'm going to be doing this other thing. And I said, if you really feel the pull to do this, like you trust that over the plan, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's so important. Like being willing to go with the flow. And do you have any suggestions around that? Because I know for myself, I've been the type of person where I veered away from strategy. Like even getting myself to to plan something is sort of like pulling teeth. I've gotten a lot better. Like I've been stretching my strategy muscle, but even in the beginning, like if I would launch a challenge, like that was the thing that I could focus on. And then like even thinking about selling after, sometimes felt like too strategy for me. Like it felt like I was being inauthentic or too boxy.
Yeah. So I feel like there has to be a happy medium and everyone has to find it for themselves, right? So one of my big things is also like, I can't tell you how selling works best for you or how it feels best for you, right? Like for me, challenges have done super well, and I've done a lot of webinars and I've gotten some sales from them, but I haven't felt like I had great sales from them. And a lot of it has to do with I pressure myself a lot when it's like one event.
Mm-hmm.
So the energy that I bring to a webinar is different than a challenge where I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to you tomorrow anyways, like I can't mess it up too bad. So I feel number one is like making sure you're using a selling strategy, whether it be challenge, webinar, discovery calls, right? Anything, but whatever it is that it feels good to you. Energetically and for where you are right now. And then I think number two is approaching it more as like you're still providing value and content and answering questions and being helpful, right? Like we're not like when we go into the selling phase, it's not like buy now, buy now, buy now, right? It's more like, if you're still struggling with this, like, hey, this is what I do, right? Or, answering questions. All of this week, I'm launching one of my programs right now. And all of this week, I've just been giving little tidbits, right? Like you need leadership in your business. And, this is how you can be a better leader is by not following the mold all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that little tidbit was valuable. And then after I said, and this is what we're going to do in our program, right? So it's like, you can still be value-based and give advice and be helpful and be genuinely yourself. And you can still offer the help. Because that's another big shift for me was like, the thing is, if you don't sell, you can't help them. Like you just
Totally. And someone else will, right?
exactly. Someone else will. And what has happened to me in the past too, like I had one client who she's like, my gut told me I had to hire you. And I've been wanting to hire you for a year. I saved up a lot of money. And then I had seen this other coach everywhere. Like everywhere I went, this coach was there. And so I ended up hiring her. And then she was so disappointed in that experience. And then she came back to me and she was like, I should have just followed my gut from the first place, right? And it was that, I mean, it's not that I'm not visible. Like I'm always posting in the same areas. Like I'm always doing the same stuff. I'm always getting out there. So, but the point there is like, if you're not willing to sell, there, like, did I have offers at the time she was looking? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, because the other coach obviously had an offer and she took her up on it. So it's more like, are you, showing up for your people and looking at it as a journey? For me, I look at it as like, I can help a lot of people through my free content, but the depth of that help and that transformation for them is way smaller than if I do coach with them and like, it changes their life and their business, right? Like
Totally.
that, I mean, the depth is, and it goes back to like my wanting to help people, but it's, I want to help people deep and wide.
Yeah, I love that analogy too, because I think that's really what we want to provide, right? Like that is our strategy. Like if you can have, a pond or whatever, you imagine like, okay, so you want to let people start dipping their toe in, right? Like that is the point of free content, whether it's things like this or Facebook Lives or posting. You want to like start letting people dip their toe in, and then it's like, okay, so depending on the way that you work, and I think that's really important. I know it was really, really important for me, and a big part of the strategy that's felt good to me. So the work that I do with my clients is really deep. So I've always felt like I needed that in between, like first level, that people can work with me before they like fully come in, in the center. So that's where group programs have felt really good for me. And I think, it just feels like knowing like your process and knowing too, it's like, how comfortable do you feel like jumping in the middle of your pool with a brand new person? Like, if that feels scary, maybe they need like the outside ring where it can be like the next, the shallow end versus jumping into the deep.
Totally. Especially if you have like a longer term program. Like I've definitely experienced that where like people have bought into my like long-term, it's 6 months, and it's like, oh my gosh, we've gone really deep, really fast. And that can feel uncomfortable, especially as you're getting to know each other. So I do love that analogy that you're talking about, like with your programs too, like, there can be levels and getting to know them for yourself, right? Because most likely if they're following you, they're getting to know you. But then that like creates another filter of like, hold on, I want to get to know them too.
Mm-hmm. And that's also a process of like building your confidence to be able to have the offer or to make the sale for the bigger thing. So, even if it's single sessions or whatever that inner, the first level is, it's really creating the confidence and expanding the capacity to receive.
Totally.
Okay, so I want to go back to the actions, like the client generating or the money generating activities that people can do on a daily basis just to ensure that they are taking steps to, because I think, having strategy is important, but even like that is a strategy just on a daily basis. So it's sort of like tending your soil and, making sure the plants are water. I'm getting all these nature analogies today. But like that's really an important part of then. So when you offer the thing, like you already have fertile ground versus like having to start from like a dry, non-nurtured soil.
Totally. So I want to continue with your analogy and remind you that or remind the listeners that you don't always have harvest, right? Like you have periods where you're planting a lot of seeds. You have periods where the seeds are growing and then the harvest happens, right? So for me, I look at it as how can I plant some seeds? So for me, that's usually things like, posting on social media, getting content out there, getting featured places. That starts to really get me seen by people. And then I have another layer, which is the connection piece, which is like inside my community, right? The people I interact back and forth with, the people I might reach out to because I really was thinking about them in a genuine way, right? Like the people I see on my news feed and I'm like, oh my God, your daughter's starting school. Happy, congratulations. Like, how are you feeling about that? Because that's, it's a parent, that's a big thing. And then, so that's the connection piece. And then the conversion piece is like, you do have to sell sometimes, right? So like, are you selling? And I like to think about sales every day. And it doesn't have to be buy my thing right now. It can be like, okay, come join my email list. It can be, come join my Facebook group. It can be, let's hop on a call together. It could be a connection call, which is like no pitch, or it can be a, discovery call. So like making sure we're selling something every day, whether it's your ideas, your, community, or an actual program.
Totally. And what's coming to me too is it could even be just talking about the thing. I know for me, that was a big piece of letting me start to get more into the energy of offering. So just like from my heart, right? Saying, I'm excited about this new program I'm working on. I'm excited about XYZ and or talk about the creation process or talk about the prep process. So it's like, I'm being genuine, I'm being authentic, I'm sharing parts of my process, and I'm also letting people know what I'm doing. So it's like warming them up. It's planting those seeds.
Yes. Yeah. And I could not agree more, like letting them see behind the scenes, right? Like of what it is that you do. Right. So one thing I started doing on my podcast is I'll do like coaching calls. Like, this is my coaching call with a client. Like, this is kind of what it's like, because they might have an idea of what coaching is, or they might have a negative or positive idea from a past coach. And so I don't want them to just go off of their idea. I want to show them what it's like. And of course I have, you get permission and stuff, but sharing your process and what you do is a huge part of selling the idea, right? Like we're selling the idea. We're not necessarily selling the thing yet.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, this is so good. I feel like we could probably keep going on and on and on. But I do want to honor the time. So is there any last little tidbits that you want to say to our watchers today?
Yeah. I feel like a big piece is just remembering that the selling is helping, right? And that depth of the help and the transformation that you can provide to somebody only happens after they buy from you. So I think just tuning into that and remembering that. And then I think listening to your gut. And for me, that honestly has been a struggle because I want to just strategize. And it's let me listen too, right? Like you can have both and you can play and dance around with that. So that's.
So I'd love for you before we close, because I feel like this is important. Like, do you want to share a little bit? So as a strategist, as a consultant, like this is totally your jam. Like, is there anything you want to say about times when you ran with the strategy from the logical place of like having the goal and like mapping it out, like how you're going to get there and taking action? Because I know you're totally an action taker. Like you are not, you do the things like 120%, versus the times when it was like a deep knowing, or like you were really connected to your intuition and took action from there.
Yeah, so it's funny because it happened with the same program. So the first time I just listened to my gut and I did it the way I wanted to. The launch did not look perfect by any means. It was not following any of the rules of a true launch sequence, right? So I had a small offer. I sold it off of a challenge, and the challenge had done really well the first time. I didn't have the offer attached to it the first time. So I was like, let me run this on autopilot behind the scenes in my business. I just want to see what happens. So the first time I ran it, I got like 40 people in the program. And it was just running on autopilot through Facebook ads in the back end of my business. And I was just getting sales like daily. It was awesome. Then the holidays hit and the Facebook ad price went up. This is just the reality of life. And the funnel, even though my ad budget was low, the funnel was not converting profitably. So again, this goes back to like, you got to just know your numbers. But even though I was getting like under $1 per lead, it wasn't generating enough sales to cover the cost of ads. And so I decided to turn it off. And then with plans to restart it later. So then after the holidays, that was in like December last year. And then after the holidays, I was like, let me follow the right strategy for getting people through this funnel. And I set up the perfect strategy. My ad budget was super high. I think I spent around $800. And it was a lot. And the first round, I think I only spent around $400. And so then the second round, I spent like double that. I had it through the right, strategy, and it sold too. So it only covered like half of my ad cost. And I was like, oh my God, this is so crappy. So I just felt like that was a perfect example. It was all within the same course. It was the same course, the same offer, it's just hilarious because it was like, I was doing all the quote unquote right strategy, but it was from a forced place. It was very forced in that second round. And the results totally showed that. However, the two people that came in through that program were both ideal clients. One of them ended up buying another program from me and then bought my 6-month coaching program. So it did eventually pay off. And then the second person that bought, I got on the phone with them just last week and they're probably going to be joining me from my current program. So it's like the two people that came in were the two perfect people for me, which I was super grateful for. But when you look at it just as far as the numbers, that was a failed launch, and I was really pushing and I was doing everything by the book instead of doing what I felt inside like I did the first time.
Okay, and that leads me to one last piece that I want to say, because I think this is important too. Being I think the best strategy, right, is taking action and being unattached from the results. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, and it sounds like that's sort of what happened to you. So maybe at first you were like, oh my God, the first time you were totally unattached, right? Because you had no idea what was going to happen. You were just following that impulse. The second time, you were planning. And I think this is what happens. I see this so much with entrepreneurs, and I used to do it. I've gotten so much better with it, blending in my intuition with strategy. That's kind of my thing now. But in the beginning, it was really, really challenging. And so we have a plan, and then what happens is like we map it out and we become attached to like, okay, I'm going to email my list. I'm going to be posting in Facebook, and this is going to lead me the clients that I want, or I'm going to post this assessment and then I'm going to get clients from that. And that's what would happen with my challenges when I first started doing them, right? So like I'm offering a challenge and then I'm going to offer a single session. And what would happen is the energy was like being blocked because I was saying like, this is what's going to happen. But I think like the key, right, to like successful strategy is following our gut, right, and being unattached to the actions that we're doing. And it's also just taking some of those everyday right actions without being attached. So just because you're posting on Facebook every day doesn't mean that you need to get a client every day, but it's just trusting that you're like watering your soil and you're planting seeds and being super unattached. And I know for myself, when I'm unattached, I get clients from the most random places. Like I'm taking the action so that I was actually talking to one of my friends about this last night. So I think I think a lot of people need to hear this, but I'm taking the action. So like I might put out assessments, or I might email some past warm leads. And sometimes the energy comes back to me like the most random, unexpected ways. So this totally new person sees my post and then she's like, hey, my spirit guides told me I need to work with you. And it wasn't someone that I emailed. It wasn't someone that I had a discovery call with. It wasn't somebody who's been following my posts or whatever. But I think what's the important piece is like, we need to be in action, but also be unattached and just trusting that the energy is going to flow to us and flow back to us.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more. And for me, like what works really well, because I am really sciencey, is like I just think of it as an experiment and then just kind of like release whatever might happen, right? So I have a hypothesis of what might happen. And then I just kind of am like, well, let me see. And then I've had the same experience like just this week, right? Like I'm launching a program. I got 2 affiliate commissions from totally different things, right? Like, but it's like I've been doing the actions for this group program, and I've had sales in this group program, but I've also had these crazy random affiliate money coming in from my website, which I'm like, I didn't even realize people were using that, you know?
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And if people want to connect more with you, can you tell them how they can do that?
Yeah, so you can find me in my Facebook group. It's called the Impact Driven Entrepreneur, or my website, marianacruiz.com. But my website is currently being redesigned, so it's kind of like in a funky place. But totally love the process of that.
And where can they find your podcast if they're interested in tuning in more with that?
Oh yeah, thanks. Good. Thanks for reminding me. So that's the Impact Driven Entrepreneur podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, like any of the podcast players.
Awesome. So thank you so much again. And if anyone is watching and has questions, feel free to ask them in the Facebook group, and you can tag either one of us, and we're happy to answer them and support you. Bye.
Yay, thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome.